Since everybody's quiet, we might as well just start and jump into it. I'm Ryan Frederick. I've got a little bit of a cold. For those of you who know me, I sound a little bit probably nasally, but that's probably par for the course.
I just thought it was sexy.
Did you? I appreciate that. What are you doing after this?
Going home to my wife and kids.
Okay. I'll be at a bar alone with my nasally voice. This is Troy from Rise. 16-bit and pins is probably how you best know Rise. Give Troy a hand for showing up here tonight and talk with us. Got to thank Rev1 for having us in here and letting us take over again. This is Startup Grind. We sit down and have a conversation with somebody like Troy to talk about a business, either as a founder or as an investor. So Troy's going to talk about the business of entertaining adults tonight. Charles, not that kind of entertaining adults. This is just, games. This is Jenga, ping pong, right? Some adult beverages involved. That's Charles from Get Devs. They're a sponsor of Startup Grind, so they help us fund buying the beer and the pizza and that sort of stuff. And his cohort in crime, Brian, is standing in the back waving now. So say hi to those guys. Alex and a quadrille of people from Dickinson Wright are in the back. The guys that look like lawyers, that's them. So if you want to talk to people from Dickinson Wright about legal stuff, talk to those guys. I'm Ryan from AWH. We build software products for clients. So if you want to talk to somebody about that, Bobby and Alex are in the back. They would have checked you in and said howdy, and you can talk to them more about what we do. So I think that is it for the introductory stuff. What's it like building a business, and is it a good business entertaining adults?
I hate mics, first off. So
you have to use it.
Okay. Well, if I don't have it here and I start doing that, just remind me because I hate mics. So what was the question again?
We're off to a fabulous start. Is it a good business entertaining adults?
Yeah, it is. I mean, it's not the business that I set out to do when I started my career. It's what we do now. We still look at ourselves as brand development. We build brands. Right now, the brands that we're building entertain adults. So it's a profitable business. Never really wanted to be a bar or restaurant owner, and we'll get into that here in a little bit. But yeah, it's a good business.
So you had a branding agency before.
Yes.
And you did that for a pretty decent run for quite a while.
Yeah, I mean, I've always been in marketing and advertising. So I was working for an ad agency when I was in high school. It's just always what I've done. Been to several different cities. Was here in Columbus now for almost 20 years. I'd say probably about 12 years ago, I started my own brand strategy firm called Elevate Thinking. Took on a lot of healthcare, industrial products coming to market. We pretty much, looked at the end user. Who's your audience? What message do they want to hear? How do you insert it into their day-to-day life and really position brands? I completely got sick of clients. And that's the honest truth. I did not like building brands for other people anymore and helping them steer those brands, and just kind of got really sick of it. And 16-bit was literally a distraction for me. It was something I, worked on the brand development of on the side, and then kind of started looking at it and kind of had and I cuss a lot, people, sorry. Kind of had an oh shit moment that it could actually be a legitimate business. There was a hole in the market. So really looked at it, did the plan around it with the goal of doing 5 locations in 5 years. And everything kind of spun from there.
How did you first think of putting retro video games in a shop and doling out some booze, that was a thing that people would want and it would work?
All right, we're going to do this opposite. Show me the number of hands in this room who in college you did not think of video games and beer at the same time. Pretty much. I mean, everybody's thought about this at one point. It's, for us, it was bringing back nostalgia. We're at a kind of a segment where people that grew up on them have disposable income. They started their careers. Things always come back around. It's interesting to me to see kind of the younger developers go in and they're discovering this new technology for the first time. So it was something that I always thought of, just never really, put it to the test. And then, as we saw, there was a hole in the market with it. Again, just developed the brand around it, looked at the numbers. And the simple thing is, it's length of stay. In the hospitality industry, which I knew nothing about going into all this, it all comes down to length of stay. So, you typically go to a bar and you watch a sporting event, or you go to a bar and you eat food. Okay, most bars have food, so you stay there longer, so you drink more. We don't do food. We occupy your time. Our average guest stays 2 to 3 hours, and the margins are in the booze.
So that has to be like off the charts good, 2 to 3 hours length of stay compared to an average bar, right?
It is. It's alternative entertainment. You're keeping people there longer. The margins are better. Obviously, liquor and beer margins are way better than food. You also don't have the expense of building out a kitchen, all the staff that goes with that. So we've really just kind of streamlined it and focused on where the margins were.
How quickly did you know once you had 16-bit that was the case, that you had sort of stumbled into what is a very high margin operation?
I'm really conservative with projections going into things, and I knew it would be successful. I didn't know financially how successful it was going to be. We really looked at the individual and that whole length of stay model. What we didn't look at, which for us is why we've started to do other things, was the amount of events that we do and the amount of corporate events that we do. That for them to be able to bring people in and entertain them in a different way, that's when our normal formula of what we thought revenue would be for a year and what different locations can do. You put the corporate event side on it, where you're opening a little early, or they're coming in and someone like an Abercrombie or a Nationwide is running the whole place out. That's when that was like the icing on the cake for us. And it was like, oh, we need more things like this. And so, things spun out of that. And you can see that now with a lot of the alternative entertainment that's happening. From dueling axes, axe throwing to, there's so many different things going on now in the hospitality industry.
When did you, because you have the idea and 16-bit is kind of a side thing while you still have Elevate. When did you make the decision to begin to focus more attention on 16-bit? And was it a sort of cold turkey, stop doing Elevate, do 16-bit, or was it a gradual evolution?
I knew I was going to stop Elevate, probably a good year before we did. And we kind of stopped taking on clients. I was going to turn my focus to building 16-bit and that brand. I was just burnt out, honestly. And so, I think we kept Elevate open for about a year. So it was open until we opened our second location in Cleveland. And at that point is where we kind of transitioned the company and kind of shuttered Elevate, and Rise Brands came out of that. So some of my people that were with me at Elevate are still with me at Rise. But a lot of them aren't. And it was a choice that I made that I just not a business I wanted to continue down. And, I pissed some people off with that. But, it was, I didn't want to do it anymore. So it was time for me to move on.
How much of your legacy brand experience serving clients has helped you build the Rise brand and the brands under Rise with 16-bit and pins?
Everything. The quick story is, out of school, I was a toy designer. I designed product and collectibles. So anything from collectibles for Harley Davidson to crayon sets for Disney. And for me, I really enjoyed the ability to, do industrial design, which was my major.
When I picture a toy designer, you're the first thing that pops into my head too. This is crazy.
Yeah, yeah. You just talk to my wife. I was about 100 pounds less then, and I had a full head of hair too. I really enjoyed the ability. I started out in industrial design. I went over to graphics, and then I was always in advertising. So doing product, it allowed me to develop three-dimensional, but then also do packaging that went with it, but then also do the in-store. So for me, it was everything. And I never got such a high than seeing someone buy something at a store that I designed. And so for me, that was the biggest rush. And you know, a lot of what we do now is, I mean, first and foremost, we develop brands. We want to run a successful business. But when someone steps into 16-bit or steps into pins, and that experience they have, or you know, that little thing that takes them back to their childhood, them enjoying our space and what we provide, for me, gives me the same rush that I had back when I was a product designer.
So is this a, I like asking people this question. Is this destiny? Is this where you were sort of meant to end up and meant to do? And then was it intentional or more opportunistic?
I think it was a little bit of both, to be honest with you. I've worked every job you can imagine, you know, throughout, you know, growing up and into now. Out of school, it was one of those things I always wanted to switch jobs every 2 years, just because I wanted to experience more. You know, going into this, it was very strategic, you know, what we were trying to do with 16-bit. It became very opportunistic once we kind of learned the hospitality industry and really the model of being able to do higher volume, better margins, keep people there longer, which is why we've gone on to do other things. So did I think 16-bit would get to where it is now? Yes. At that time, did I even envision doing pins or some of the other stuff we're working on? No. So I think it's a little bit of both.
So what are some of the other things you're working on?
Well, so one of them, some people might have heard of it. We have a place called No Soliciting that's attached to our offices over on Chestnut.
Yeah, I'm still waiting for my box to show up.
Yeah, that was founding members.
Oh shit!
Which is just it's a private bourbon bar. So it's a lot of other business owners in town. It was something that was never a revenue center for us. It was I wanted to build the space out because I wanted to be able to have a really good cocktail in a vintage Chesterfield and not be bothered. And it's kind of grown from there. So it's not a brand that we expected to expand or do anything with. We are now. So we're working on a second location and a couple other markets. Two of the other things we're working on right now, I cannot share yet.
No Soliciting is if you get the chance to go, it's a super cool space. What is it? I don't know what the proper term for the smoked Manhattan that they do in there is.
Smoked old fashioned.
Old fashioned, right?
Yes.
It's just spectacular.
Yeah, I mean, everything we do is experience, from 16-bit to pins to No Soliciting to some of the other stuff we're working on. When it comes to brand development, one of the things that you might not notice, but if you really look around, you'll notice at all our locations, you won't see any other brands. You won't see any other logos. You won't see cocktail napkins that are branded something different, glassware that's branded something different. All our new locations, you won't even see tap handles. We want to surround people with our brand. A lot of other bars and restaurants take on marketing dollars and sponsorship, and they have all that tchotchke stuff. For us, it was really delivering an experience that was all about our brand and giving people the visual cues and the sounds and everything else that reminded them of something else. So with taking that to No Soliciting, I'm a big bourbon guy. Every time I've had an old fashioned, you either have a really good one or a really bad one. We wanted to really perfect one. So we spent a lot of time on the recipe, how it's done. It's pretty theatrical, how it's made in front of you. And frankly, it's funny because for me, it's the best compliment, is everybody tells us you can't call it a smoked old fashioned because they go anywhere else and have an old fashioned. It just doesn't compare. So it is a signature drink for us, but it's more about the experience. It's about giving people that memory.
How do you know which experiences are going to work and resonate and which ones aren't? How do you sort of leave things on the cutting room floor that you're like, oh man, I don't think we should do that because I just don't think it's going to work, and why do others rise to the top?
I always say that, when I have ideas, they run laps in my head, and they'll run hundreds of laps before I'll let them out to our team. And so a lot of them die there. Now, my wife, Katie, would also love to tell and share some of my ideas that never made it.
She should be here.
Oh, no one wants that. Most of the time they won't leave my head unless I won't share them publicly, even with my team, until I know that it's something. And then we work on it together. So there's been a lot that have died. I mean, I can talk about really bad ideas.
Give us a couple of the bad ones that didn't make it out of your head.
Well, this is I still.
Are you in therapy, by the way, to deal with this?
No, just a lot of alcohol. So here's a good one. This is back from when I was a product designer, and I like to golf and I like to drink, and I still have the prototype in my basement, and I still own all the URLs for this, so no one steal it. But for me, there was really nothing with a golf bag that allowed you to really keep your beer cold. That was easy. That wasn't like a cooler on the side of the cart, or if I had my bag over my shoulder. So I mocked up and invented what essentially became a beer Pez dispenser. That literally was the beer caddy, and it was a tube that slid right down your bag. It had a spring system built in that when you popped one beer out, the next one popped right up to the top, and it was just a more convenient way to drink beer on a golf course. But then,
how has this not seen the light of day?
My wife killed it. But at the time, I used to do a lot of product that we had a license agreement with NASCAR. So you take that beer sleeve and you sling it over your shoulder, and you can just sit there and go pop a beer out, and your next one's right there. And then you have the double deuce one where it's the shotgun style, so you have two. And then you have, Jeff Gordon on, everybody else. I mean, come on. It would have been great for a year.
Right. How did the beer stay cold?
It's just a thin slit material. So there was a different material that we researched from other coolers and a manufacturer in China, and we wanted people to drink them fast too. So.
Well, that's true.
It was all about the Pez dispenser. I just wanted to pull a beer out and have another one right there ready.
Right. You just wanted to use it, right? How did you come up with how did you make the decision to add pins after 16-bit now has a little bit of traction and success? So when we did Columbus 16-bit, we had our projections of what we thought it would do, and as we opened up additional locations, Cleveland became a little bit bigger, because we learned, okay, higher volume, more wells, being able to do events. We then did Cincinnati, which our first 16-bit was probably about 2,700 square feet. Cincinnati is about 4,500 square feet. And it's pretty easy to look at the numbers and see what Columbus can do perform-wise and what Cincinnati can do when you have two more wells, when it's a bigger space, get more people in, it can do larger events. So a lot of it was figuring out all that and the hospitality industry. People might have heard me say this before, but when we were building 16-bit and kind of figuring things out, I never want to be a bar or restaurant owner. I build brands for a living. That's what I do. We run businesses. We bring business to market, show that they're scalable, profitable, in hopes to send them on their way one day. We did a lot of things that weren't traditional in the hospitality industry. And so I'd have other friends in the industry always say, well, that's just not the way it is. And my simple response was, I don't give a fuck. I'm not building a bar. I'm building a brand and a business. And so, learning that from the beginning of how we did that and how we kind of really put the procedures and process in place and more about experience, going to pins
frankly, after we opened up 16-bit here, there's like, I think 6 barcades now in town. So, everybody has their kind of niche throughout town, and we never fell off from that. I think it brought more people to kind of experience something different, a night out. But I started to work on pins from a simple standpoint of I wanted to do something much larger, that we could do corporate events of 1,500, 2,000 people. We had different kind of experiences throughout, more indoor, outdoor space. And frankly, I wanted to do something that no one could rip off. And so that's where pins came from. And
Yeah, because the bowling aspect is unique. I'm sure that it adds some production, operational, logistics challenges of operating that sort of equipment inside of a bar, right?
yeah, no, I mean, there was a lot to figure out with it. I mean, we're still figuring it out. We wanted something that was more approachable than traditional bowling. I mean, we looked at candlepin bowling. There's a big thing in Detroit now called feather pin. We looked at a whole bunch of different things. We looked at foaling. Who knows what foaling is? It's like bowling, but you're throwing a football. So we looked at a ton of different
I'm glad you didn't do that.
So we looked at a whole bunch of different things. Duck pin allowed us the ability. Traditional duck pin goes anywhere from 24 to 48 feet. A lot of bigger bowling alleys are converting over to it now because it's more accessible. No holes in the balls, small ball. A kid can play it up to a 90-year-old. No shoes. It's just much more convenient. You can do it a lot better with a beer in your other hand. So it would.
Maybe that's my problem, because I actually don't feel like I'm scoring as well as I should be.
Yeah, it's harder than you think.
It is. It's much harder than you think it's going to be.
Backspin. It's all about backspin. You keep the ball in the pocket and in the pins, it does more damage. You throw it, everybody tries to muscle it, and they throw it, and it goes right through.
Well, everybody that I go there with says throw it harder.
No.
So now I feel like that I'm throwing as hard as I
It-
can.
It took my 9-year-old beating me several times for me to realize that the ball needs to stay in there to do more damage.
Okay, good. Noted.
No, so there was a lot more to figure out. I'd say the first one, I think we're still dialing those lanes in, to be honest with you. It's a lot of mechanics to it.
First one is the one downtown
Yep.
on 4th, right?
Yeah, it's one on 4th.
And that is, if memory serves, that was an old Napa automotive repair facility, right?
NTB Tire.
NTB Tire, right?
Yes, yeah.
Apologize to our friends from Napa. It was a shuttered NTB.
Yeah, it was a wreck of a building. It smelled like tires and oil. It was General Tire way back in the day. The basement had a drive down because it's where Yellow Cab worked on all their cabs. Every single window in there was cinder blocked over. The entire outside and inside the building was reflex blue because that was NTB's colors. So we sandblasted every square inch of that. The wood, the brick, we really wanted to bring it back. And
So how do you have, because I think for many of us, looking at that building in the state that it was when you acquired it, it takes a tremendous amount of vision, right? To be able to say, I can envision what it can become and not what it is now. Is that a knack of yours, to be able to look at something that it needs to, that much TLC to become what it needs to be?
yeah, I think a lot of it is just part of the creative process. Yes, I can see that stuff. For me, the older, the crappier, the more damaged, the more that I think we can turn it into something. All of our buildings that we do new builds now, we always want it to be part of an up and coming neighborhood or the revitalization of a neighborhood. So that's why we picked 4th Street. We did the first 16-bit. Now that space, back in the day, was a fish market. So like the little elevated spot back where all the pinball machines are, there was probably about 14 inches of cork on those walls because that was the cooler. And then from there it became a radio station, and so that was the sound booth. And it was 2 different spaces. My broker who we work with thought I was crazy. But I was like, yeah, I could just see what 4th Street could be, with Dirty Frank's there and us and what it is now. And, you know, I mean, we did a lot of work on that building. Yeah. Now, Pins, I actually walked through that building because we were looking at it from a corporate office standpoint and storage standpoint. And, you know, I stepped in it and I told our broker, his name's JR, I was like, yeah, this would be wasted on us. This needs to be a brewery. It's perfect for a brewery. I mean, you have 2 stories in the back, you know, the basement. Structurally, it was meant to hold the tonnage. I was like, to put nothing in here but a brewery. And we were actually considering doing Pins over where Plant Moran is now. Yeah, right next to where Salt and Pine was and all that. And the deal ended up, you know, we knew it wasn't going to work, and in the end, it wasn't enough square footage. And I called JR while I was traveling, and I was like, I never even thought of doing it there. And I started sketching out, you know, layout, could it fit, could it work? And you know, I called him and I said, look, have you leased that building yet? And he said, no. I said, don't. You know, we're gonna do a new concept in there. So I walked through it twice, and I just was able to see it.
If you heard about an incident there in August where a guy threw a glass on the patio, I did not know him. He was with our group. He was from Pittsburgh, so I did not claim responsibility for his actions.
So the one thing I have learned about the hospitality industry is you make things so people can't touch it. If they can put their hands on it, they will break it or destroy it. Plain and simple. You know, touchless faucets, touchless paper towel dispensers. Now, we kind of ended up in a situation with the duck pin where we're giving people, you know, a 6-pound ball with a TV.
What can happen?
Yeah. And this was one of the flaws in our design. The very first one, there's no approaches. You know, it's kind of more like skee ball bowling combined. And we never thought of how many people would hit that front lip, and it strategically sends the ball right into the TV. We, I think, replace a TV once every 2 weeks. It's amazing how many TVs we've gone through. Our new ones, the approaches are at the same height as the lane. And so that doesn't happen anymore unless someone's really drunk and they're just being violent. So yeah, people destroy shit. It's crazy.
It's people will be people, I guess, right?
But every time there's a story that comes out of a Friday or Saturday night, I'm always reminded again by my wife of the stuff I did when I was in college or stupid stuff. I'm like, I guess I deserve it.
So a little bit of empathy, yeah. So as you think about so give us a sense, what does the team look like at Rise? What's the operation look like to support the footprint that you have now and give everybody the footprint of what you have now around 16-bit and pins?
Yeah, I mean, so Rise started out, you know, with 4 or 5 people when we did the first 16-bit. My agency was about 30 people at the largest. We scaled it way back to do what we were when we brought 16-bit to market. Currently, we have 35 people at Rise, about 400 people company-wide. By the end of this year, we'll have about 60 at Rise and about 1,200 company-wide once our locations open up that are under construction right now.
How many locations do you have now, and how many are in?
So I always got to go back and count. Right now, we have 4 16-bits, 3 pins, 3 16-bits under construction, 4 pins under construction, 1 no soliciting under construction.
How long does it take to get one open?
Anywhere from 3 months to a year and a half. So we're building in Nashville right now. It was supposed to open last summer. We ran into, it's a historic building down there. We took the Gibson Guitar old warehouse in the Gulch, and we just uncovered so many structural issues that we weren't expecting. So that one, it was a learning experience for us. So yeah, anywhere from 3 months to about a year.
How have you funded the company to this point?
Say that one again for me.
How have you funded the company?
So it's all self-funded or SBA. So we have no investors, no partners. I just like to say I don't play nice with others. But we've been really strategic to be able, through the SBA, offset, from TI dollars to how much money we're putting in to what we need from the SBA. SBA, you cap out at $5 million, okay? So we're typically, I think right now is the most we've borrowed, where we've borrowed about $4 million in total. But we will borrow as little as we can, pay it off as quick as we can, and basically, it's a very profitable, successful business. We've been able to put money back in to open up these other locations, which has kept me from having to go to a bigger commercial lending or, private equity, so on and so on.
Where can it go? Is this 50 locations? Is this 100 locations? And where do you want it to go? Because I would imagine, so I'm gonna take a step back even as a precursor to that question. Going from the first 16-bit to the second 16-bit, how big of a leap was that just in terms of now having a remote operation and team?
For me, it wasn't that big of a leap. I love risk. I love kind of backing myself in a corner. It's how I've always done more. So for me, it was just the next step. I will say that, you asked earlier, what does Rise look like now, okay, as opposed to what it started with. I will say that over the last 3 years, it's been interesting because we're a creative firm. We're a brand development firm. But then we started opening all these locations, and I realized real quick that, myself and my small team can't do everything. So, I'd fix a toilet, I'd do payroll, I'd handle the finances. Well, as you grow, you got to let go, and so.
Did you let go of the fixing the toilet? Is that the one you let go of?
Honestly, I still fix toilets. It's the worst. Our end of days come through, and so Dublin, we had a sink break, and on a Friday, and for me, I'm not opening up the next day with a broken sink, and if no one's going to call a plumber to come do it, I'll go fix it my damn self. So I still do that. But so we were a creative firm, but then we started to grow these locations and become a bigger company. So we changed drastically. We had to hire on operations. We had to hire on a finance department, HR. And literally all of a sudden, it was like our creative department was 2 people. And we had all this other overhead that was, allowing me to do what I enjoy and everybody else. But then it was, wait a second, I don't want to be a hospitality company. I want to be a brand development firm. So for us, we're building the creative department back up. We're still covering all those other bases, but I don't want to be a hospitality company. Our whole goal was, 16-bit was 5 markets, show profitability, show scalability, identify the additional markets, let someone else come in, buy the brand that wants to take it to 20 locations. For us to take it to 20 locations, we'd have to drastically change our company. And so we're trying to stay true to what we set out to do. Same thing with pins. Yes, we've hired a lot of additional support, but again, we said 7 locations, and then we sell the brand. So our goal is to bring brands to market, sell those brands off, and develop more stuff.
So do you feel comfortable that you're on that path? Do you think that there will be at least a bevy of buyers to acquire either Rise or the individual brands? Yeah,
so we'll sell off individual brands. Rise will always be Rise. So we've set the company up from a structure standpoint where the brands are holding companies. Each individual location's its own company. They just all pay Rise a management fee, which is how we make our money.
You're like your own venture capitalist.
I know. It's all these different percentages, but in the end, I own it all. So it's all semantics. But no, we've already had interest, as far as anything from, partnerships to, buying brands to us rolling into other companies. It's not on my timeline yet. End of 2020
Would you ever do a collaboration or a partnership, with because you mentioned the Nashville location. So the thing in Nashville that seems to be, and I don't actually know what I'm talking about. I just had a conversation with a guy like a couple of weeks ago, so it's top of mind for me. But like Florida Georgia Line has opened up, a bar and restaurant there, and Blake Shelton, and I think Dirk Bentley did. And so the trend there seems to be these sort of celebrity endorsed places. Would you ever entertain something like that?
Well, our place is going to be called Brad Paisley's Pins. No,
We probably should call Brad and tell him.
no. Yeah, I mean, everybody's moving to that down there, and if you're from Nashville and kind of the people, they hate it. The commercialization of Broad Street has been crazy down there, and those deals will not survive, knowing kind of the more inner workings of some of them. We will never be that because other people go that route. We will always kind of stay true to who we are and what we're trying to do. We don't feel like we have to attach something else or partner to deliver a better experience than we already are. So, I mean, even down to, us not having food, and, we've had a lot of food partners that want to come in. For me, I'd rather support the food trucks, and, we don't charge them to be there. We don't take a percentage. It's us helping out another small business. If they can provide a service to our guests, again, to keep them there longer, that's great. I mean, I'd rather sell them 2 more beers than take $1 of their profit. So.
And I just think it and this is just all perception. I think it just looks cool having the food trucks outside of the locations. I think it gives it an interesting vibe that sort of, I think, supports the overall brand.
Unless there's brick and mortar around you, then it gets really complicated. Because, I mean, we want to be good neighbors to...
Well, Bridge Park East would be an example, right?
Yeah. So, I mean, we still do a food truck there on the weekends, just because, frankly, the volume that's happening up there, I mean, there's 2 hours waste at the restaurants. So, I mean, if anybody bitches because we have a food truck in front of them, I mean, come on, expand your location.
You should have made your spot bigger, right?
Yeah. So, I mean, we won't bring up food trucks up there that type of food can be bought anywhere else around us. We don't do food trucks on South 4th, obviously. I mean, there's plenty of great options. That's why we always let people bring food in as well. Again, it wasn't a profit center for us.
You mentioned risk. You're comfortable with risk. Many people aren't comfortable with risk. Do you think there is a path that someone can take to get more comfortable with the risk and things that they can do to get more sort of risk tolerant?
That's a tough question. For me, I think it's just, it's something that's just ingrained in you. I will say that, my risks keep getting bigger and more expensive. And so, the way I looked at $1 is completely different now than before. So I think it's something that's a risk to me is not going to be a risk to someone else. Something that might be a risk to you might not be a risk to me. So everybody's risk toleration is different. I would say that I've always taken risks, even if they're small, and they've just kind of gotten bigger, and I've kind of gotten more ballsy with it. I think if people kind of make the leap to make themselves a little uncomfortable and can end up on the other side where they need to be, it allows them next time to maybe go a little farther. So I think it's something that you're just either comfortable with or you're not, but I think once you become comfortable with it, it's like drugs.
Yeah, I agree. You seem like you're comfortable being sort of the anti-establishment guy, right? And probably that way at Elevate and sort of in the branding space, and now with Rise in the hospitality space. Is that a moniker that you sort of, in badge of honor that you wear proudly, that you are approaching this whole bar thing differently than other people are?
I think in the beginning, yeah. I think even when I started Elevate, we were the anti-agency, if you will. We unbundled the services at the time. Everybody was trying to sell everybody everything. And we just said, look, we just want to do your brand strategy and creative development. I don't want to buy your media. I don't want to do digital for you. I don't want to do this. And it was a time where, things became unbundled, and a lot of great agencies came out of that time. I would say now, as we grow and we get bigger, I mean, you have to have HR, you have to have processes, you have to have procedures. And I think internally, we don't have a ton of turnover just because, our people make really good money and they have fun. But as we start layering in process and procedure and, we bring on operations people from larger hospitality groups, it changes internally a little bit. And there's a lot of pushback of, well, that's just not who we are. We don't wear uniforms or do this or do that. But stuff does have to evolve. So as much as I don't want to be corporate, at the same time, I want all the checks and balances of being corporate. So it's a fine line to walk.
Yeah. Well, that's when you know it's time to sell, right? Is when you cross that threshold, and maybe that's the appropriate time.
Just a little longer.
I'm going to ask a couple more questions and then we'll throw it out. Let's talk about sort of building a business in Columbus and entrepreneurship in Columbus. You talked about SBA, et cetera. Who else do you sort of seek guidance from, and do you get support from, if anybody, or if it's just those ideas running laps in your head, that's cool too.
Well, it used to be Corey Manis, but then she left the company that I still work with. So I was fortunate in the beginning. When I had Elevate, I joined a group called EO, which is Entrepreneurs Organization. And I would say that I never realized how much I needed it until I joined that. Entrepreneurs Organization, it's an invite-only organization, certain amount of revenue, certain amount of employees. It's just all business owners. And for me, it wasn't really the network siding of it. It was we'd have a small group of people. In my forum, as it was called, was 8 people, and it was other business owners who were sole owners of their business or a founder of the business, with the plan to aggressively grow their business. And so these 8 individuals became some of my best friends over the last 10 years, and it was us really making an active effort to grow our company. And, we helped each other. We shared, it's called the 2% rule. You only share the top 2% of your life or the bottom 2%. I talk to them about stuff I wouldn't talk to my wife about, my employees about, colleagues about. And so being surrounded and motivated by that group to kind of continue to push and want more was a huge resource for me. Out of that, my financial advisor became a really good friend of mine who strictly works with first-generation entrepreneurs. And, it was a lot of getting my ducks in a row and learning a lot of stuff that I really need to worry about that type of thing. And then, I've been fortunate that, I know a lot kind of old school people that have brands in town and kind of new school as well. So people have been, friendly enough to give me their time to kind of help and be a soundboard for. So resources like that and just other business owners who become really good friends that you can push and really bounce things off of was instrumental. I never would have transitioned my company from Elevate to Rise without having that resource.
Do you have any routines that you hold sacred, or do you get up at 3:15 every morning and read a book and do some yoga?
Yeah, I do yoga. I did for 6 months. I did yoga, and I was like, this isn't for me.
6 months, wow.
Yeah.
You saw it through for a pretty good run.
I paid in advance. I don't think I do. I will say this: I'm not a morning person. I do wake up at 7 o'clock. Will answer email, return phone calls from my bed until about 9:30. I am a late night person. My biggest creative time is probably from 10 to 3 in the morning. But no, I don't have a lot of routines.
So I have an opinion about this. I want to get yours. What do you think about the articles that come out that say, if you want to, this is what the 15 most successful people in the world do every morning, right? Those sorts of articles and blog posts that say you must follow this routine to be successful.
I'll read them. Everybody has their own thing that's going to make them successful.
Then you go back to sleep?
Yeah, pretty much. One of those is you have to be a morning person. You read all these really successful people that get up at like 4 a.m. There's no way. People wouldn't want to deal with me. There's just no way. I think everybody just has to find when they're productive, when they're happy doing what they're doing, whatever period of time of day that is. And it might not even be, I'm not going to work Monday, Tuesday, because I love working on Saturdays. I think people just got to find their own little niche. And, from the beginning of time, just to say, we work 9 to 5. Well, who said so?
Yeah, it feels like we're a little bit embarrassed or ashamed if we don't sort of align with that, right? And if we perform better and think better at 11 o'clock at night versus 11 o'clock in the morning, that somehow we're supposed to feel bad about that.
Yeah, we don't, Rise doesn't have hours. We have people that are there at 8 in the morning because that's when they like to work, and they'll leave at 3 in the afternoon. You will never see me in my office before 10:30. I just don't function that way. So the way I look at all of our people as kind of little independent businesses, if you will. They need to manage their time and be productive. And when that works for them is great, as long as we're all on the same page. But it's really up to them to be successful at what they're doing as a part of what we're doing. But to mandate when they're going to do it or how they're going to do it, I think is counterproductive. It's just the way that I've kind of always worked, and I've never fit into that mold, which is probably why I moved jobs every 2 years early on. But
Darren over here has mics, so if you raise your hand, Darren, the fine-looking chap in the gray hoodie, will get you a mic so you can ask your question.
Good evening. My name is Kevin from Ultrasound Special Events. Talking about building your company and what we had just talked about, and that kind of unstructured work environment. And I heard you say previously you kind of like the unstructured approach, but are kind of conforming to a molded process and procedure type business model. How do you manage that unstructured yet still demand the best out of your employees for the times that they give, and how do you measure that, I guess, and build that so where you don't lose that autonomy? But I'm hearing what you're saying. You want to be open and let people do what they want to do, but where you're at now and growing, you need the processes and the accountability.
yeah, I would say that, one, you let someone else be the bad guy of instituting those processes and those procedures. We made a huge shift. I hired a COO about a little under 2 years ago, which I never, ever thought I would hire a COO. And I never thought I would pay someone more than I get paid. and it was instrumental because he enjoys doing the things I hate. So the stuff that when it comes to process, procedure, but then I actually mandating it and training people on it and holding them accountable to it, he enjoys that. I hate it. So I still get to be disruptive because I don't follow his process and procedure. But, it's a lot of that. From an HR standpoint, from a finance standpoint, we hired really, really good people, and we have a leadership team now that they love doing their thing as much as I love creating. And the stuff that I don't enjoy when it comes to, really holding people accountable to budgets, expenses, I have my number that I feel comfortable with, but I don't want to be the one enforcing it and putting the processes in place. So they do it because they love it, and people eventually conform, and we still have, the people that are going to disrupt that or say, they're an idiot. I don't know why they're doing that, but yeah, you really need to do what they're saying. It's a balancing act. I also think you got to be really good. This was a simple one. When we launched pins, I knew that, so with 16-bit, we let staff just wear our apparel, okay? So t-shirt, hoodie, whatever it is. But I never liked that from a brand standpoint. A customer couldn't really determine determine who was a bartender, who was a bar back, who was a manager, or if you're even an employee, because you just look like someone else that was in there. So with pins, we went to, the mechanic shirts, where all our bartenders wear a color, all our managers on duty wear a color, the bar backs wear a color. And it allowed them in a very creative way and, making it a, kind of a sellable thing to them. Hey, we're going to provide you guys the apparel. You don't have to buy anything. We're even going to launder and clean it for you. Just grab a shirt at the beginning of your shift, throw it in the bag. We'll send them out to be cleaned. It's something you don't have to worry about. And they loved it, absolutely loved it. Well, as we start doing our new locations, we're doing a lot that are side by side or combined. So we instituted the same thing with 16-bit, where we came up with a really cool, fun shirt for them. And it was like anarchy. Like they threw a fit. And I'll say, from a marketing standpoint and communicating to our employees, it was not rolled out the right way. It wasn't rolled out of why we're doing it from an experience standpoint, why we're doing it from a benefit of them standpoint, and how it's making their lives easier. It was something that went out without the proper communications, the proper story behind it. And it was like we asked them to stand there naked. It was weird. And so we had to go back and kind of re-educate why we're doing it and get everybody to understand, and had to custom fit some of the shirts just to make people happy. But, I think you just have to do it in the right way. You have to really get people to understand why you're doing something, why it's important for the company and why it's important for them. And it's not just a mandate. The more that they understand the business, the more they understand how we make money and how the business runs, the more involved they are. And that's one of the things from the beginning that, we share our financials with all our employees. We share, here's our goal for the night. Here's what we're going to do to get there. They can come in the night before, they see what our revenue was. They see what everybody's tip out was. I want them to understand how we make money so, they can make money. With our events, the way we schedule them and the way that we put them out on the schedule, people will see, oh shit, Nationwide has 400 people coming in on Thursday. I want to work that shift because they know what it means to them financially. So it's really communicating those things to them in the right way of why it's a benefit for them and what it means to them to start to blend culture, versus structure.
You're just making a shit ton of money, aren't you?
It's all going back into locations.
Good answer.
Got a kind of two-part question here. So first, will Columbus continue to be the birthplace for all your brands moving forward, or will you look to launch new concepts in other cities? And then second is, how do you think Columbus, if at all, has been reflected in your existing brands, and how have you changed that, or how has that impacted going into other markets?
So this is my, attention deficit disorder. I was thinking about your first question so much I didn't hear the second one. So I'm going to answer the first one first, and you can re-answer the other one if you don't get an answer. I would say I've never thought about that, so you just asked it. Right now, for us, everybody knows Columbus is a great test market. Look at all the brands that come out of here. Look at all the brands that come here. We will always start here. I don't see a reason why we wouldn't. It's close to us. It allows us to really test what we're doing. With Bridge Park, our new pins and 16-bit location, we have 2 other brands that are going to be launching up there. We considered moving our headquarters up there because, frankly, people come in for training. It's all right there. Investors, potential buyers come in. It's all right there. We decided not to do that from a culture standpoint and stay downtown. But I don't see any reason or anything we're working on why we would test it somewhere else. Now, I think you have to tailor our brands and what we're doing to the markets we're going to. And Nashville's a huge example of that, and so is Charlotte, where you still want to feel local and part of the community. But I can't think of anything, even in my head, that we'd be working on that would make sense not to launch it here. What was the second question?
So you actually kind of started to answer it already. So the second question is, how is Columbus, as a city or as its culture reflected in your concepts? And then how, when you do take a Columbus-based brand, a Columbus-raised brand, to Nashville? How does that brand need to change to resonate with Nashville? What does that process look like?
Yeah, I mean, I would say, Columbus, just to look at everything that's come out of Columbus, from small brands to large brands, and the amount of inspiration that's here. For me, wanting to do something downtown is because I used to live downtown. And when I lived downtown, there was no lofts. There was nothing downtown. There's no place to eat, no place to go. And, to see what's been happening to downtown Columbus, I'd say over the last 8 years, has been really exciting and made me want to be part of it, which for another reason why I was like, okay, I want to do this. I want to create more entertainment downtown to draw people downtown. I would say the coolest thing ever is when we went to Cincinnati and built an Over the Rhine down there. So I think it was probably a month before we opened, Homage opened, and then Candle Lab opened, then Elm & Iron opened. Now Mikey's is down there. So it was really weird because there was this shift of all these Columbus brands coming to Cincinnati. At the time, a whole bunch of Cincinnati brands were coming up here. And it's the same thing. I think the first time, I went back to Nashville on a true research trip, I got in my Uber and I searched Jenny's. And the 4 Jenny's that are there are all in places you'd want to be. In Charlotte, that location, I didn't even realize it, but Jenny's a half a block from us. So to see other Columbus brands and what they've become and what they came out of and the stories behind them, there's no more inspiration than that. I know every city has it, but there's a lot of good success stories coming out of Columbus.
How do you talk to those other people? Do you talk to like John Lowe and some of the people in Vessler and some of those folks and those other brands?
So yeah, I talked to Ryan. His place is like right next to my office. So he just pops in. I would say, I haven't really gotten to know Jenny. Now, John and my COO are really good friends, and they meet and share all the time. I've been fortunate. I've become really good friends with Cameron Mitchell. And so, for him to share what he shares and travel with him has been inspiring and knowledgeable. I talk to Joe DeLoss all the time, Mikey all the time, a lot of other smaller brands, some more than others. Some, are very similar in mindset and some aren't. So, but again, I've never met anybody in Columbus who wasn't willing to sit down and listen or talk about something. So I just don't think enough people ask a lot of times. It's surprising how much people want to help in this community. So,
Please help me thank Troy for joining us tonight.